I want to go with you through the diagnostic algorithm, EUS-based algorithm to diagnose submucosal tumors, and want to say some words on differential diagnosis and risk assessment of the smaller hypoechoic subepithelial tumors. And if there's left some time, I want to speak on natural cause and management decision based on endoscopic ultrasound. We find subepithelial tumors in around 1% of all endoscopies, and more than 50% of these lesions are of mesenchymal origin. And this is a very large group comprising benign tumors, for example, leiomyoma or inflammatory fibroid polyp, and on the other hand, the gastrointestinal stromal tumors, which have a potential malignancy. As well, we find some frankly malignant tumors, for example, high-risk GIST, lymphoma, and leiomyosarcoma. Therefore, we have to differentiate all these tumors. And first, let's say that only around 10 to 15% of all these tumors are detected because they cause symptoms. Most of these lesions are detected incidentally. In our group, around 87% of these cases. That does not mean that they are harmless. Some of these tumors can cause severe problems if we have not a proper diagnosis and treatment. But of course, if we have symptoms with gastrointestinal stromal tumor or other submucosal tumors, this leads to a short diagnostic workup, and in most cases we have to proceed to surgery without any delay. The first step in diagnosing subepithelial tumors is not endoscopic ultrasound, but to perform a good endoscopy. And this is important because localization is very important. As you can see from this table, for example, the pretest probability of an subepithelial tumor which is located in the esophagus is around 90% to be a leiomyoma, because all the other tumors are very rare. And in the stomach, more than 70% of the hypoechoic subepithelial tumors are gastrointestinal stromal tumors, but there's a very large variety of different lesions we have to characterize. And in some cases, we have a clear diagnosis. For example, in this case, in the esophagus, this is very typical for Abrikosov tumor. This is, of course, in the stomach, very typical for pancreatic rest. And this is typical for lipoma, whereas we cannot decide if this is a GIST and this is an inflammatory fibroid polyp, or it is the inverse. That means that localization and the gross endoscopic appearance gives us a high predictive value for diagnosis and outcome of most of the subepithelial tumors. The second step, of course, is endoscopic ultrasound, and we have several techniques to use: B-mode, Doppler contrast-enhanced endoscopic ultrasound. I think elastography in this case is not as useful as, for example, in lymph nodes or in pancreatic lesions. And we have to describe a lot of things. The most important is a layer of origin, or is this really a subepithelial tumor? Is this a compression coming from outside? Of course, we have to measure, because some of the decisions we have to take depend on the size of the lesion. Of course, we describe echogenicity and, more importantly, echo pattern, and look for special features like cystic areas or tubular structures. And we look for lymph nodes, which is not so important in the case of subepithelial tumors. And this is very easy to differentiate subepithelial tumor from extraluminal impression, for example, by the spleen, by splenic vessels, by gallbladder or extraintestinal tumors. And in our series, around 18% of all the lesions suspected to be a subepithelial tumor turned out to be impressions from the outside. This, for example, by a chronically inflamed gallbladder, and this is an example of a splenic artery. This is an example of the splenic pole. And of course, endoscopic ultrasound has the same sensitivity as endoscopy, but a much higher specificity to classify extraluminal compressions. This is also very easy. There are two groups of subepithelial tumors, the anechoic ones, cysts, hemangioma, and varices, and on the other hand, the hyperechoic ones, which are in almost all cases lipoma. There can be some difficulty, as in this example of a giant lipoma. In this case, it is not clearly hyperechoic, but is inhomogeneous, has some hypoechoic areas in it. But in most cases, the combination of endoscopy and endoscopic ultrasound will give us the diagnosis also in this case. The most frequent hypoechoic tumor, especially in the stomach, is gastrointestinal stromal tumor, which is always potentially malignant, and in the stomach only around 20 to 25 of the other tumors, for example here leiomyoma, or in this case rarer tumor, the gastric inflammatory fibroid tumor, or in some cases also lymphoma and submucosal adenocarcinoma are to be taken into account if we are confronted with an hypoechoic submucosal tumor. Therefore, some words on the differential diagnosis of such hypoechoic subepithelial tumors. In the stomach, the second frequent hypoechoic tumor is leiomyoma, which is always benign. And we can characterize this by immunohistochemistry. And important to know is that around 50% of the hypoechoic tumors located in the cardia are leiomyomas and not GIST. Gastric schwannoma is very rare, as always benign, and other than the other subepithelial tumors, in around 30%, has enlarged lymph nodes in the surrounding, and we have no such much data on vascularity, but in our cases all these tumors were hypervascular, as GIST, for example, and differential diagnosis is very difficult between these three groups, schwannoma, GIST, and leiomyoma. Pancreatic rest is in most cases easily diagnosed if we have the combination of endoscopy and endoscopic ultrasound, and histology is almost never needed. Of course, there can be some difficulties with the deep types which are connecting with a muscle layer, with a deep muscle layer. Around 90% of these lesions are smaller than 20 millimeters, and they are not round. They have a long-short axis ratio of more than 1.5%. And in some cases, they have some features, for example, of chronic pancreatitis, as in this case from Lübeck, from a workshop, with these calcifications and some cystic or tubular structures. And in this case, it is very easy to identify, of course, the diagnosis of pancreatic rest. We have to think of subepithelial metastases. They are rare. They can look like GIST. For example, in this case, it seems to come from the deep muscle layer, but was clearly a metastasis of a melanoma. And in this case, we have heard that in most cases it is not dangerous to perform endoscopic ultrasound biopsy. In this case, it was. This was our only case of a seeding, and this looks like a subepithelial tumor connecting or rising from the deep muscle layer, but turned out to be a metastasis of adenocarcinoma, which was biopsied by us 6 months before. Neuroendocrine tumors are rare, but they are to be considered in the duodenum, jejunum, and in the rectum, and most of these tumors are hypervascular. And this is the most problematic tumor. This is just because malignancy depends not only from the size of the tumor and mitotic count, but also from the site of the lesion. And therefore, the guidelines say that they should be resected when they have a size of more than 2 centimeters, or if they have some suspicious worrisome features, and they are easily to be classified by immunohistochemistry. And if we go a little bit deeper into the topic of GIST, then we have the possibility using endoscopic ultrasound criteria to detect such worrisome features, and these features are not very specific. They are a little bit more sensitive, and the most important is size. In most studies, they found the cutoff value of 30 or 40 millimeters to decide if a lesion is malignant or not. An inhomogeneous echo pattern, for example, cystic spaces, as you can see, a small one in this tumor, irregular contour ulceration, and in some cases enlarged lymph nodes. And clearly, this tumor is not a malignant one, and this is suspicious and turned out to be a high-risk GIST after resection. Site is also important. For example, a GIST of maybe 3 centimeters in the stomach has a lower malignancy potential as, for example, in GIST of the same size. This is located in the rectum with a much higher risk of malignancy. Again, we can learn from the localization of tumors, and please compare only this picture of the distribution of GISTs among the stomach from proximal to distal, and on the other side, number C, showing that more than 50% in this group of patients of leiomyoma were located in the region of the cardia. And this helps us to classify these hypoechoic tumors. And there are other criteria described in this study from Korea, and they say that most of their cases of leiomyoma have been homogeneous and hypoechoic, whereas GISTs are more frequently of medium echogenicity. Here the hypoechoicity is the same as of the deep muscle layer, whereas in GIST, in most cases, the deep muscle layer shown here is more hypoechoic than the tumor. And of course, the other criteria like echogenic spots and some cystic spaces will help us to differentiate between those both types of tumors, but only with an accuracy of around 80%. That means you need some other tools, and one important tool, in my opinion, is that GISTs are hypervascular. On the left-hand side, you see contrast-enhanced ultrasound, endoscopic ultrasound of a GIST, with in this case, homogeneous hypervascularity, but larger GISTs have often avascular areas, whereas in leiomyoma, in almost all cases in our study and in other studies, turned out to be hypovascular or nearly avascular. You see only some small vessels in the periphery of these tumors, and the larger a GIST and the more irregular vessels, then the higher the risk of malignancy in these GIST, according to several studies. Third step is sampling. And sampling is under discussion. Of course, we need always immunohistochemistry to decide along immunohistochemistry pattern if this is a GIST, leiomyoma, schwannoma, or an alternative lesion. And if we look into the meta-analysis published in 2016, we found that the diagnostic yield to get such material for immunohistochemistry was only 60%, but newer needles have a yield of maybe around 85% and maybe the future for sampling of subepithelial tumors. Therefore, the guideline of ESGE has only a very small window to perform endoscopic ultrasound guided sampling, but I think this will change with the advent of the new core needles for EUS guided biopsy. Of course, you have not to biopsy all tumors, but only those in which there's a consequence. For example, you want to have surveillance of this patient, or you have before surgery targeted treatment, or you have suspicion of metastasis or neuroendocrine tumor. I know I have to come to my end, and therefore I go only to 2 slides on the natural cause. We know that very small, 10 millimeter or less, subepithelial tumors are found in autopsy and gastric resections in around 25% of cases. Not all of these tumors will get malignant, of course. But on the other side, we have some data from the SEERS database that around 11% of very small, in this case symptomatic cysts, have already metastatic disease at the moment of diagnosis, and therefore surveillance of these very small cysts is very important. And you see that the larger tumors of more than 10 millimeters grow faster than the very small ones. And you can decide by the tumor doubling time or by the growth of these tumors of your initial diagnosis of leiomyoma, schwannoma, or low-risk cyst is correct, or if the patient has growth of this tumor, then you have to reconsider diagnosis. I come to my conclusions. The algorithm to diagnose subepithelial tumors starts with history of the patients, has he any symptoms, and of course with endoscopy, which has a high predictive value for diagnosis of some of these tumors. Very easy is to diagnose impression, lipoma, in most cases cyst or other anechoic lesions, but difficulties, we have a lot of difficulties with the hypoechoic subepithelial tumors, which look very much, they are very similar in their endoscopic ultrasound appearance. The role of EUS-guided sampling is controversial, but I think the newer needles will make a difference in future. And also the management of the very small hypoechoic subepithelial tumors is controversial, but close surveillance will prevent that we overlook potential malignant gastrointestinal stromal tumors. Thank you very much.